Hello and welcome back to another session of Bible Basics in our series on Christian apologetics. My name is John Kitchens. I'm the director for the Bible here in Wilmington, Oklahoma, welcoming you to this program. Today we'd like to talk about the cosmological argument for the existence of God. Now I know that sounds like a mouthful, but essentially what this argument contends is that there must be a necessarily powerful, sufficient first cause to account for all the subsequent things that have happened in the universe. Now, when we consider this question, somebody say, well, why are you going to start here? What's going on with this? And it's necessary to prove the existence of God first before we move further into our inquiry into Christian evidence. Because if there is no God, then there's no need to move forward. Because then there's no Christianity, there's no divine record, there's no logical reason for us to continue on with our study. And people don't like to waste time on things that are pointless. So this is a dispositive question that must be resolved before we move further in the inquiry. And when and when we look at the existence of God, we cannot confine the inquiry merely to looking at physical things in our universe because the definition of God indicates that God is outside the universe and the universe cannot contain him. Therefore, our inquiry would not be limited to merely the sphere of the physical universe. So, as a result, the mere deductive method of inquiry, like using the scientific method alone, becomes insufficient for this kind of question. Moreover, the creation of the universe is not a repeating event. So we can't put it in a lab, we can't observe it, we can't have a control group and an experimental group. So the normal method of the scientific method itself is not applicable to this kind of inquiry. But that doesn't mean that we are left without methods of determination. The historical legal method of inquiry is the inductive method of proof that is the alternative in the deductive method of proof and is the one that we will use in this inquiry. And someone says, well, wait a minute, you can't do that. That's not acceptable and only science is true. Well, that raises a problem because all facts are determined by weighing evidence. And so the method for determining the thing that's true, we put all the evidence for one thing on one side, all the evidence against it on the other side, and determining which weight of evidence is greater. And so, logically speaking, if the evidence for the existence of God was greater than the evidence against the existence of God, then we would be logically and philosophically compelled to admit the existence of God and all the necessary consequences that flow from that contention. Now, someone might say, well, you can't use this method because don't have science is the only thing that's true. Well, that causes a problem because we use the inductive method of proof in our courts, in our criminal courts, in our civil courts, and our administrative agencies and legislatures, and in our daily life, we basically conduct life on the basis of the inductive method of truth and actual determination. So therefore, to take this one question that has the most importance for everyday life, and to exempt it from the method of determination that we use in everyday life is both unreasonable and untenable. So, as we mentioned before, that the cosmological argument is essentially the argument of cause and effect. It's that if you see an effect, you must have a cause that is sufficient to explain it. Aristotle, in around 400 BC, argued that this as the first cause, the prime mover, in his philosophical writings. One time when Benjamin Franklin was in Paris and he had received an atheist friend who had come for an appointment, the atheist looked down at Mr. Franklin's desk and saw a model of the solar system, and so the atheist said, well, who made that model of the solar system? Ben Franklin looked up with a twinkle in his eye, and he said, no one, it just came into being spontaneously. And the atheist said, you're joking, and Franklin replied, so is anyone who contends that the universe came into existence by mere chance. Now, when we look at the Bible's contention on the existence of God, we are not looking for proof, because if someone says, I want to convince you of something, and then appeals to the Bible and says, the Bible says it, therefore it's true, therefore I convince you of it because the Bible says it, well, that's circular reasoning. And we don't do circular reasoning. That's not permitted. The purpose of the inquiry that we're doing here is to understand the importance of the determination of the existence of God in the Bible's worldview that it presents to us. In Genesis 1:1, Moses said that God, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. He assumes that God exists, he makes no argument for it, and moves on with his narrative. And when we look down later in the chapter in Genesis 1 verses 20 and 21, that it is implied by necessary implication that a creator that was eternal and sufficient is necessary to adequately explain the cause of creation. That there is more power in the universe than man has either individually or collectively, therefore a source greater than man is necessary to create the universe. And the closest thing that we have to the cosmological argument in the entire Bible is in Hebrews chapter 3 verse 4, where the cosmological argument is employed essentially to argue based on the fact that a house requires a builder or architect, that the universe would also require a creator in the same way by analogy. Therefore, based on the precedent of Hebrews chapter 3 verse 4, that we may infer that the Bible approves of the use of the cosmological argument. Now, the fact that the Bible approves of the use of the cosmological argument does not prove the validity of the cosmological argument in and of itself. We have to do that on its own merit. And so let's turn now briefly to examine it, is that when we consider the size of the solar system and the universe, it completely blows us away. If our solar system were the size of a coffee cup, then the galaxy, this Milky Way that we're in, would be the size of North America on that scale. And the closest galaxy to us would be 1/8 of the distance of the moon from us. And so that gives us an approximation of the scale of the universe. And when we look at the power of the sun, that the sun puts off enough energy every second to power the United States completely for 13 million years. And that's according to the Griffith Laboratory in Los Angeles, California. And so, since we can't create that kind of power, again, a force greater to us must have been the cause of that. John Mammoth, in The Existence of God in an Expanding Universe, argues that scientists have already determined that a superhuman force is what is necessary to account for the creation of the universe, and so in that the infinite source of the creation of the universe is demanded by the practicality of the complexity of the universe, and that only a termination in an eternal first cause must be sufficient to account for all secondary causes and effects. So in other words, Mr. Mammoth is saying that we have to have this eternal, immovable first cause to hang everything else on. Otherwise, there's no logical way to express, to determine how everything came to be. Now, there are some alternatives. And the first one is, well, the world is just an illusion. And we're not going to consider that alternative because, number one, it's not subject to verification. You can't prove or disprove it. So even those who want to subject everything to scientific truth only, they themselves are bound to reject this alternative as unworkable since it cannot be verified or disproven. And it would have no practical results for man, either positively or negatively. So there's no utility. So let's reject this alternative. Spontaneous generation is that the universe just came into being spontaneously out of nothing. However, we know from the first law of thermodynamics that nothing is either being created or destroyed. Now, matter merely changes its form. Therefore, the first law of thermodynamics rejects this contention. Werner von Braun determined that nothing disappears without a trace, and from this determination from the first law of thermodynamics, Dr. von Braun argued the logical necessity of the existence and immortality of the human soul from the first law of thermodynamics. The next contention is that matter is eternal, that it has always existed and it just simply changes its form. However, this doesn't work either because the second law of thermodynamics says that in a closed system, when matter changes its form, it always moves towards entropy and away from order. In other words, everything starts to break down in a closed system because there's no new energy coming in. And we see this, the new car gets old, the house becomes a mess. Check a teenager's bedroom when it's been cleaned, and then see what happens a week later. A notable example is that the house of Charles Darwin was decaying and had to be rebuilt, and they had to spend a whole bunch of money to reverse the entropy and to use a lot of repairs. So we see that everything in the universe is running down, and if we contend that no one created the universe, that it is a result of natural forces, then by definition, the universe becomes a closed system and is subject, therefore, to the second law of thermodynamics. And if that's not enough, then if matter had existed eternally and the second law was in place, then the universe would have already stopped running an infinite amount of time ago because it would have run out of energy and we wouldn't be here today talking about this. And so that deals with these things. And to go along with this is the law of biogenesis. Louis Pasteur demonstrated the validity of this principle that only life generates life. And there are no instances that have been observed in science where non-life generated life. Therefore, the contention that life forms resulted spontaneously from non-living matter must be rejected according to the standard established by Louis Pasteur. Let's see. And when we consider the probability of spontaneous generation, that it was extremely I lost my place here, I apologize. Is that the theory of spontaneous generation of matter or changing of the form of matter is far from proven, and satisfactory proof of it is highly improbable. And that was written by Alfred Elliot in his zoology text, and he was an atheist at the time that he wrote. And the final attempt to get around this is, well, there may have been an infinite chain of causes to account for what's going on. And here's the problem with this, is that this concept confuses the theoretical infinite that is necessary in mathematics with an actual practical infinite in real life. And here's why. Because if you drew a line that represented infinity both ways on a Venn diagram, there's no way to ever get to the beginning of the line. And so you're always traveling along the line. So you can never get to the origin point. So you can never say, here's how everything started. And as a result, if you started traveling along the line, you never get to a later point in time, because you can never move, you can never get to now from the beginning, because everything is infinite. There's no endpoint, there's no terminus either way. So there's no way to navigate the infinite chain of looping, and so as a result, this model basically becomes useless. And to practically demonstrate this, we want to consider something called Zeno's paradox. Zeno was an ancient Greek philosopher, and so he said, imagine that you're sitting in a theater, and they were oval-shaped theaters, and you drew a line from one side of the stands to the other. Today we would do this like in a football stadium or a baseball field, and so use the football stadium, and so you draw a line across the football field from one side of the stand to the other, and you know that there's a distance between the point A and B at the beginning, but you can divide that distance infinitely, because you can always divide the segments of the line into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. you're never ever going to get so small, mathematically speaking, that there's no way to divide the line further. And so you're always going to be infinitely dividing up the line. But at the same time, the distance between the 2 points of the side of the field that you're drawing on the line, they haven't changed, and you can actually walk across the football field. And so the fact that you can divide this line infinitely doesn't mean that you can't walk from point A to point B across the football field. And so this is the paradox that Zeno used to explain why it's not valid to take a mathematical concept of the infinite and to apply it in the real world in a way that would create an infinite chain of causation of events. And so the last alternative, that is left is creation. By default, that's the only thing that's left. But before we get somebody saying, well, wait a minute, you said that matter can't be eternal, that things always change, that matter can't be eternal, therefore God can't exist. However, the second law of thermodynamics only applies to physical things. So, like a non-corporeal entity would not be subject to the second law of thermodynamics. And so we have to remember that our definition that God is a spiritual being and thus is not subject to physical laws. Now, the last thing I'd like to leave you with is the list of first causes that are demonstrated by science that are necessary to account rationally for the existence of the universe. Number one, that a cause of limitless space must be infinite in extent. Number two, a cause of time must be eternal. Number three, a cause of power must be boundless. Number four, the cause of perpetual motion must be sufficiently powerful to sustain it. Number five, a cause of consciousness must be infinitely conscious and aware. Number six, a cause of will must be volitional. Number seven, the cause of emotion must be emotional. Number eight, a cause of religion must be moral. Number nine, a cause of ethics must be spiritual. 10, the first cause of justice must be just. Number 11, the first cause of love must be loving. Number 12, that the first cause of life must be living, and so we conclude is that the reason from cause and effect that we just listed leads us to conclude that the great first cause, the prime mover, is an infinite, eternal, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, personal, emotional, volitional, moral, spiritual, aesthetic, holy, just, and living being. And we have derived these determinations of the characteristics of God that are necessary based solely on the principle of cause and effect, that we have determined that the only God that meets these requirements is the God of the Christian Bible. That a non-physical cause of the universe, that is God, is the logical and reasonable conclusion of the cause of the effects of the universe that we see. Now, we want you to notice here that we have not argued that the existence of God is demonstrated because the Bible says so. What we have done is to take the simple principle that no one would dispute is that every effect must have a cause sufficient to explain the effect and apply that principle of reason to the great effects of the universe and have determined logically by reason and observation that the only logical explanation for that effect is the existence of God. So we hope that this presentation has been informative and helpful to you, and we want to encourage you to be back with us at our next program of Bible Basics, where we'll take up this question more carefully, and we hope that you'll join us. And be sure also to share this link on your social media pages. Tell about it to other people, and we hope that you'll like the page, like the video, and subscribe as a subscriber, and turn on those notifications to make sure that you don't miss any new posts from Bible Basics. And so we hope that you'll consider these things and determine to examine them to see whether they're so, and to share those with others around you. And we hope that you'll join with us next time for another program of Bible Basics.